ADX Florence, the prison built to break the world's most dangerous men. Alright, picture this. You've earned a reputation as one of the most feared criminals in your prison. No punishment could break you, and you were always back in the yard causing chaos. But that's all about to change. Because now, you find yourself shackled on a prison bus, headed for a place built not just to hold you, but to break you. A place where silence is a weapon and time is the torturer. You're headed for ADX Florence, the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Deep in the high desert of Florence, Colorado, lies the absolute end of the line. This is the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, or ADX. It's the nation's only officially designated federal Supermax prison, a modern-day fortress engineered for one purpose: to hold the inmates that no other prison can handle. And when we say handle, we mean neutralize. This isn't a place for getting your life back on track. Former wardens don't mince words about it. One famously called it a clean version of hell, stating flatly it was not designed for humanity. ADX was built for the worst of the worst, a curated collection of international terrorists, cartel kingpins, serial killers, and spies. These are the guys who, even behind the walls of a normal maximum security prison, are still a threat. And since it opened in 1994, not a single person has ever escaped. Not one. A perfect record that tells you everything you need to know about its brutal effectiveness. But the real story of ADX isn't just about steel and concrete. It's about the crushing psychological pressure it puts on anyone sent there. It's a system of total control designed to strip away who you are and plunge you into near-total sensory deprivation. And to understand why a place this extreme even exists, we have to go back to a single day of bloodshed that sent shockwaves through the entire prison system. The Marion murders. The story of ADX Florence starts with blood. 2 federal correctional officers, murdered on the same day, October 22, 1983, at the U.S. Penitentiary in Marion, Illinois. Back then, Marion was the highest security prison in the country, the place that held the worst of the worst. But on that day, the system failed catastrophically. The first attack came from Thomas Silverstein, a ruthless leader of the Aryan Brotherhood. While being escorted from the showers, even in handcuffs, he managed to get his hands on a shank and stabbed Officer Merle Klutz to death. A stunning, brutal act that put the whole prison on lockdown. But the horror wasn't over. Just hours later, in another unit, another Aryan Brotherhood member, Clayton Fountain, did almost the exact same thing, killing Officer Robert Hoffman with a shank. 2 officers murdered on the same day, inside what was supposed to be the most secure prison in America. The Marion murders were a brutal wake-up call for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. It proved that their highest security protocols just weren't enough for a certain type of inmate. As the director at the time, Norman Carlson, put it, they were dealing with men who had absolutely no concern for human life. The immediate response was to put USP Marion on a permanent lockdown that would last for the next 23 years. This Marion model became the grim prototype for what was to come. But that was just a stopgap. The Bureau of Prisons knew they needed a new kind of prison, one engineered from the ground up for total control. A place where inmates couldn't pass notes, couldn't see each other, couldn't learn the layout, and couldn't get the slightest chance to plan an attack. This was the birth of the Supermax, and its ultimate expression would be ADX Florence, the escape-proof design. So, when they set out to build ADX, they weren't just upgrading security. They were creating a whole new philosophy of locking people up. The design is a chess game against the most dangerous minds you can imagine, and every single element is a calculated move. It starts with the location, remote, isolated, and constantly watched. The prison is ringed with massive gun towers, 12-foot-high razor wire fences, pressure pads, and motion detectors. The whole place is a web of 1,400 remote-controlled steel doors and countless cameras, all feeding back to a central control room called the bubble. From there, with the push of a single panic button, officers can lock down the entire prison instantly. But the real genius, and the horror, is in the cells. This is where you see what total control really means. Your new home is a 7 by 12-foot concrete box, smaller than a standard parking space. The bed? Poured concrete. The desk and stool? Poured concrete. It's not just for durability. It's so you can't break anything off to use as a weapon. So much for redecorating. The shower runs on a timer to stop you from flooding the cell, and the toilet and sink are a single steel unit to prevent tampering. The architecture is designed to mess with your head. Your only window is 4 inches wide and angled up at the sky. This is deliberate. You can't see the mountains, you can't see other buildings, you can't even see the sun's path. You can never figure out where you are in the complex, making it impossible to even dream of an escape route. The cells are soundproofed to stop any communication. It's a world of profound isolation. Movement is a privilege you barely have. You're in your cell for at least 22 to 23 hours a day. For your 1 hour of recreation, you're cuffed, shackled, and escorted by 3 guards to one of 2 places: an empty concrete room with a pull-up bar, or an outdoor cage often called a dog run. It's a concrete pit with a grate overhead. You can see the sky, but that's it. And you're always alone. Every interaction is controlled. Meals come through a slot in the door. Guards even cover the keyhole when they unlock your door, just in case you were studying the key's shape to try and make a copy. That's the level of paranoia we're dealing with. The psychology of isolation. If the architecture is an escape-proof cage, the daily routine is psychological warfare designed to break your mind. This isn't an accident. It's the goal. For 23 hours a day, you're locked in a silent, concrete world. The usual prison sounds are gone. It's an oppressive quiet, broken only by a food tray or a guard's muffled voice. Former inmates have called it a living death, a place where time just dissolves. Human contact is basically zero. For years, the only physical touch you might have is a finger handshake through the mesh of an adjacent rec cage. You see guards, but it's through layers of steel and plexiglass. This kind of extreme isolation is known to have devastating effects. It can lead to severe anxiety, paranoia, hallucinations, a condition sometimes called eschew syndrome. You start to lose the ability to interact with people. One former warden admitted the prison is designed to make inmates crave human contact, to the point where a simple conversation with a guard becomes a cherished event and a powerful tool for control. While there's technically a step-down program to earn your way to a less restrictive prison, for the big names, the terrorists, the cartel leaders, ADX is their final destination. The goal isn't to rehabilitate them, it's to warehouse them until they die. It's a weapon designed not just to hold the body, but to dismantle the mind. The level of control at ADX is almost unimaginable. We've talked about the why and the how, but now we need to talk about the who. The prison is home to a rogues gallery of the most infamous criminals of our time. But before we get into the chilling details of who is locked inside the Alcatraz of the Rockies, if you're finding this deep dive fascinating, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what we have coming up. The infamous inmates. The reputation of ADX is cemented by the chilling resumes of the men it holds. To be sent here is to be branded a permanent threat to society. First up, the master escape artist, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. As head of the Sinaloa cartel, he was a legend, not just for his violence, but for his uncanny ability to escape. He broke out of 2 maximum security prisons in Mexico, once in a laundry cart, and once through a mile-long tunnel dug right into his shower. So when the U.S. finally got him, there was only one place they could be sure would hold him. For a man who built an empire on movement and influence, life in ADX is the ultimate punishment. His lawyers say the isolation has shattered his health. The man who once ran a global drug empire now lives in a concrete box, having finally met a wall he can't tunnel under. Next, a name synonymous with domestic terrorism, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, the Boston Marathon bomber. After his horrific attack in 2013, he was convicted and sent to ADX under special administrative measures, cutting him off completely from the outside world. For a guy radicalized online who was seeking infamy, what's a more fitting punishment than total silence and anonymity? His voice is silenced, his legacy reduced to a number in the system. Then there is the ghost of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, Ramzi Youssef. The mastermind behind the attack, he proudly told agents, "I am a terrorist, and I am proud of it." Sentenced to life plus 240 years, he was one of the first high-profile terrorists sent to ADX, helping to define its role as the nation's holding cell for enemies of the state. Inside, he's a non-entity. He and El Chapo were, for a time, famously held in the super-secure Range 13, though public information on who is in that unit is, unsurprisingly, kept under tight lock and key. And of course, we have to mention Theodore Kaczynski, the Unabomber, a Harvard-educated genius who launched a decades-long bombing campaign from a remote cabin. The irony is staggering. A man who chose isolation was subjected to a form of it he could not control. After more than 2 decades at ADX, he was transferred to a medical prison and was found dead in his cell in 2023. His death later ruled a suicide. These men are the justification for ADX. But their stories also raise some pretty tough questions about the price of absolute security, controversy, and lawsuits. So, the prison is escape-proof. Mission accomplished, right? Well, not so fast. For years, critics have argued that the conditions at ADX cross a line into cruel and unusual punishment, a violation of the Constitution. The main issue is the long-term solitary confinement. Groups like the ACLU have flat-out called it torture. A 2012 class action lawsuit, Cunningham versus Federal Bureau of Prisons, brought some horrifying stories to light. It alleged chronic abuse and neglect of mentally ill inmates, painting a picture of a place where men would scream for hours, mutilate themselves, or live in cells smeared with their own waste. The suit claimed at least 7 inmates had died by suicide and argued that putting mentally ill people in this environment is like pouring gasoline on a fire. The lawsuit eventually led to a settlement and some changes, but the debate didn't stop there. More recently, in 2025, the ACLU filed another major lawsuit. This one tried to block the transfer of dozens of former death row inmates to ADX after their sentences were commuted. The administration at the time wanted them held in conditions that, let's just say, reflected the monstrosity of their crimes. The ACLU called it a vindictive and unconstitutional act of political theater, punishing them without any proof they actually needed Supermax confinement. It highlights the central question: is ADX a tool for security, or is it just a symbol? Supporters argue that the inmates there forfeited their rights with their actions, that ADX is a necessary evil to protect the public. But critics counter that nobody is beyond human rights, and that the psychological damage the prison inflicts creates more problems than it solves. As one former warden said, the prison's purpose is to make sure inmates are absolutely, positively not going to be a problem. The question is what that guarantee costs us. Conclusion: a necessary evil. ADX Florence is a monument. It's the physical form of an uncompromising idea that some criminals are so dangerous, the only solution is to bury them alive in a concrete tomb. On that front, it has succeeded with chilling efficiency. It has taken the world's most feared men and rendered them powerless. It has silenced their voices and erased any hope of escape. It's a promise kept to the guards on the front lines, born from the bloodshed at Marion. But this absolute security comes at a hell of a human cost. The walls of ADX are designed to isolate souls and dismantle minds. It's been called a high-tech version of hell, a form of clean, quiet, psychological torture. So, this forces us to confront a difficult question. Is ADX Florence a necessary evil, an essential tool to protect society, or is it a step too far? By creating a place designed to break men, do we risk breaking our own moral compass in the process? The Alcatraz of the Rockies is a silent symbol of this dilemma, a place where the hunt for total control meets the limits of human endurance. What do you think? Is a prison like ADX Florence justified? Let me know your opinions in the comments section below.